172nd edition of the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. In Nashville, Tennessee, I'm the professor, Matt Perkins. And a quick out across the Harpeth River from me here in the Music City, it's our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton.
What's up, man? Well, our season is rapidly coming to a close. That is our high school season with the Hillwood Hilltoppers. We are finishing out the regular season this Friday on the road at Beach. That won't really do much for the standings as far as that. I think we're locked into the 4 seed. So we will take on the number 1 seed from the other Middle Tennessee district, the Page Patriots. A little bit of alliteration there. So excited to see how we finish the season. We had a really good week of practice. I know I've said that a lot, but I feel really good about where we are mentally. We've competed a lot this week, so I feel good about that. But what I feel even better about is being here.
All right. Yeah, you guys are coming off that tough BYE opponent. So, but we can't get started without the third amigo in the second city, a man who appreciates a good calzone. It's our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook.
Well, I'm hot and bothered already. Did you guys see the Eliminator on ESPN?
Yep.
So
the second I saw that, I thought of you, Josh.
So Central Florida is eliminated, and this is what the writer said. Quote, "Let's be real, despite a nation leading 20 straight wins, it's not happening. The Knights play just one Power 5 opponent this season. Memphis, the team they beat 31-30 in Week 7, lost Saturday by 32 at Missouri. The list goes on. Take aim at another New Year's Six bowl." So, first of all, the whole Power 5 component, that's just a label we put on stuff. There's good years, down years. ACC doesn't have very many teams ranked right now.
Labels.
Yeah. So the Power 5 thing, that's just a pretend thing. They're doing the transitive property. Who cares that Memphis lost bigger to Missouri than they lost to Central Florida?
Don't forget that Central Florida, yeah. Memphis was in Memphis. Memphis, Missouri was at Missouri.
Yeah, and also it was a driving rainstorm in Memphis that game. Let's see Drew Lock in that passing attack for Missouri on the road in a driving rainstorm. It makes no sense. So the argument that 20 wins is so easy to do in the American, no one else has done it. The idea that 20 wins at any conference is easy. Well, what's Alabama's win streak? What's Clemson's win streak? What's Georgia's win streak? What's Ohio State's win streak? It's 20 freaking games. They just blew out an opponent by 4 touchdowns without their starting quarterback on the road. Give me a break. They're number 2 in my poll for a reason. This just gets to the criminality of this fake playoffs where ESPN's driving things. ESPN has contracts with the major leagues, especially the SEC. ESPN has exclusive rights for the committee of morons to do their little every Tuesday. And it's live TV, blah, blah, blah. It's all about eyeballs. It's all about money. It's not about finding the best team. And the shame is the old stupid poll system got it right sometimes. BYU, that was kind of a career achievement for winning a whole bunch of games in the 80s, but maybe they weren't the best team that year, but they were a worthy champion, and no one talks about it. The other thing ESPN has done is belittle Central Florida for whatever they talk about, that a poll had the Knights be the national champion. Not just my poll, but also an accredited poll. But Alabama's got claimed national titles. A lot of the programs do. Central Florida was determined to be the best team by a creditable poll. You don't just get to shit on that, ESPN. They are a great freaking team. And you know what? What do they need to do? Do they need to schedule Alabama? Guess what? Alabama's afraid. They're not going to play them. They can't get games. It's like Gonzaga basketball. Do you think that Michigan State is ever going to play out in Spokane. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy to say, oh, Central Florida doesn't play anybody. No one wants to play them because they're so damn good.
Preach. Well, Josh, I'm just going to let you keep going, man. I mean, like...
And keep going.
Like, seriously, like, just keep giving the sermon, man. Like, truth to power.
Yeah.
Big truth to power.
It's 20 straight games. What happens if they go 12-0 last year, 12-0 this year? That's 24. They won the title game in a bowl, so they went 14-0. What happens if it gets up to 28 in a row?
Like, and here's the thing. They're like, oh, they haven't played in Power 5 teams. Well, I'm pretty sure that last year in bowl season, now given it's a bowl game, but they beat the one team that beat both of the teams that were in the national title game.
Yep.
If you are saying that UCF is eliminated, you have clearly that tells me that you have never actually watched them play.
Yeah.
Mackenzie Milton is as good a quarterback as there is in college football right now.
Mm-hmm.
I might take him over everyone non-Tua Tagovailoa category. Like, that team's – it's not just their offense is potent, and it is, and they put up numbers in yards and points on everyone, but their defense is pretty darn good too.
Yeah, I mean, they struggle in rush defense. That's been their knock. Oh, they don't have a very good rush defense. Well, you know what? Oklahoma hasn't bothered to play defense in about a decade. They kept making the playoffs. Oregon made it to BCS and the inaugural college football playoff. And this was during the Helfrich and
Chip Kelly
era, where they refused to play any defense. So it's just a narrative, and this is why on the blog I refer to the playoffs in quotations all the time. I quite frankly disregard all these recent champions. I don't think any of them are legitimate, and I don't really care what the CFP committee does or says, because it's all an illusion.
So Georgia won the national championship last year. That's what I'm saying.
Feel free to claim it. You guys won the SEC.
Well, wait, hold on. I don't know. We didn't have a true legal motion poll, and I think the illegal motion poll would have given the national title. I think it would have been a 2-1 decision, 2 for UCF, 1 for Georgia.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
because we blocked the punt, would have put us up by 3 touchdowns, and Tua is not the hero that he is now.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, this is why the tournament is fraudulent, because let's applaud Alabama. They won 2 tough games. They beat a good Clemson team. They beat a really good Georgia team. Applaud them. They took advantage of the system. They took advantage of the opportunity given to them. They didn't win their freaking division.
This is not the first time this has happened.
So what is the point of the regular season, and what in the world is the point of conference title games if you could just go, boop, Alabama's in. We think they're the best. We don't care that the season indicated that they couldn't even win their division, but we think they're the best. So it's really that simple.
And it promotes just a style of thinking that is just completely just cycles back onto itself. Yeah. Like it becomes an echo chamber. If you keep saying that Alabama is the best, well, they're going to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yeah.
It leaves you completely closed off to a different perspective.
Yeah. And let's be real. Alabama's phenomenal this year. Alabama's probably going to run the table. You're probably going to go 12-0, 13-0, then win the 2 required games to go 15-0. But if the playoffs includes, let's say Ohio State gets back in there. Well, Ohio State just got the pants by Purdue. How are they one of the 4 best teams?
How were they last year after they got pants by Iowa?
Yeah. I mean, one of the best teams recently that got super hot at the end of the season was USC, and they didn't get to be in the playoffs.
And then they won that crazy Rose Bowl against Penn State.
Yeah.
Anyhow, Josh, I love your energy today.
Thank you.
All right, Josh. Well, you just took the ball. It wasn't even a slant. You just freaking intercepted the snap, took it to the house. So normally I'd say throw out to your first quick slam, but let's just throw out to your first touchdown dance.
Yeah, so my first slant's going to be a little bit more celebratory. There's 4 games in the ACC that feature at least one team with 5 wins. So some bowl contention games. That's always exciting. Matt, you were talking about the NC State game in your slants. I'm not going to touch that one. And that Duke game is down there in our spread formations. So that leaves Boston College and Miami, each of them at 5 wins. So the winner will lock up a bowl. A.J. Dillon, BC, kind of sniffing around. They only have 1 conference loss. They might be able to give Clemson some headaches. And Miami, obviously, in contention with Vodtech in their division race. So that one's going to be interesting. And then the other one, that sneaky Virginia team, very quietly up to 5-2 on the year, 3-1 in the ACC. They host the struggling Mad Hatters of North Carolina, who's just 1-5 on the year. So great opportunity for Bronco Mendenhall to lock down a second straight bowl real early, but that also gets their mark to 4-1 in ACC. So they're also kind of sniffing around a division. Very exciting times in Charlottesville and College Hill, Chestnut Hill.
Chestnut Hill.
Ah.
All right. Well, Coach, there is a pretty phenomenal matchup in the Fun Belt on Thursday night. Mountaineers of App State heading down to, I believe it's called Allen E. Paulson Stadium.
Got it.
On to Georgia Southern. Coach, App State going to be singing the Statesboro Blues?
Well, a lot of teams that roll into Paulson Stadium come out with a little bit of a butt kicking, except for the Tyson Summers era. That was not very kind to the Eagles. But thankfully, Chad Lunsford has elbow dropped a few steel chairs, and they're 6-1 now, 3-0 within their conference. So they are flying high right now. Up in the Eagles are flying high, pun intended. So the Mountaineers have a really tough test when they on the road, but they're pretty daggone good themselves. They had a thrashing of Arkansas State earlier this year that I just left thoroughly impressed, because Arkansas State, as we know, are perennial favorites, annual favorites, each and every year for the Sun Belt or the Fun Belt. So, yeah, some things to look for. Running back Darrington Evans has rushed for 183 yards and scored 2 touchdowns. He was co-offensive player of the week. Evans also had 115 on the ground in his previous game against Arkansas State. He has that's 425 yards on the season. He'll be a factor there for the Mountaineers if they're going to try to close out a road win. Zach Thomas, not the linebacker, but the quarterback, was 10 of 20 for 106 and a touchdown against the Cajuns. He's completed 61% of his passes, so he's been fairly efficient all year. Chad Lunsford said of Appalachian State, they're a really tough football team that runs the ball very well and is very efficient in the pass game. I think those stats I read to you describe just that. So for Georgia Southern, again, if they want to have a chance at winning this game, they've got to control the ball, control the clock. They have a run-oriented spread triple option attack. It's been a big key in Georgia Southern since they were born in 1983 by legendary head coach Irk Russell, who's known for building junkyard dogs at the University of Georgia and for headbutting his own players and until he had blood running down his forehead. He wouldn't stop until he cut his forehead open every game. So that kind of toughness is just embedded within that program, and it's been with them all throughout. So with that, they have Shea Wirtz. He has 542 yards on the ground. Running back Wesley Fields has rushed for 472. He's coming off a groin injury that kept him out of last week's big 48-31 win over New Mexico State. Fields is going to be kind of a game-time decision there tomorrow night, actually. So they defensively, again, shut down the run, win the special teams battle. This is going to come down to kind of field position, who can take advantage of opportunities. It's going to be a pretty fast game because both teams are really heavily run oriented. So it's just going to be a chance of who's going to make the big play at the opportune time, who's going to flip the field, what defense is going to control the run game better. Is Appalachian State going to be disciplined on the road? Can they win in what's one of the more tough G5 road places, Allen E. Paulson Stadium? So it's going to be a very, very intriguing matchup. One that I'm glad I'll get to kind of check out tomorrow night.
I'm happy that it's on a Thursday night and it doesn't have to run up against all the Saturday games too.
Yep.
It's a nice little feature, Josh. If I'm
what do you guys think?
I'm worried about like them shutting down that Georgia Southern rushing attack. They're the number 5 rushing team in the country, Josh.
They are. I'm psyched for it though because Appalachian State. I think one of the reasons why they got ranked is they're so efficient. Top 5 points for, top 11 points against. So they are really good on both sides of the ball. Coach kind of stole my joke, though, when he said it was going to be a quick game because I was going to say it's going to be the fastest game of the weekend because App State, 7th best rushing attack, and the Eagles with that nasty option they run. 130th in passing, but no worries when you're the 5th best rushing attack. So I think this game's going to be really, really fun. Matt, you mentioned one thing why you were maybe potentially worried about App State. I'd mention another. This is the first time they've ever been ranked in school history. Sometimes you read a little bit of your clippings for Georgia Southern. Who knows how many ranked opponents they have ever even faced in such a young program history.
Guys, keep in mind this is an old rivalry too, dating back to their time in the Southern Conference. So
yeah.
And
I
a lot of that stuff out the window too.
Yeah. So in addition to not playing too many ranked teams, I bet Georgia Southern probably hasn't knocked off any. So yeah. And then what Coach just said, these guys don't have much love lost between the two of them.
No love lost there. There's no love lost.
No.
Well, Josh, you alluded to one of the games in the ACC, the one that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes on this weekend, taking place in the Carrier Dome between NC State and Syracuse. The Orange are coming off of a nail-biter over the Tar Heels, while the Wolfpack travel to the shores of Lake Ontario with their tails tucked between their knees after the shellacking they received at the hands of Clemson. I'll be looking as to who is taking the bulk of the snaps behind center for Coach Dino Babers. Last week, longtime starter Eric Dungy was pulled in favor of redshirt freshman Tommy DeVito in the second half, and DeVito led the Orange to a comeback victory against the Tar Heels, 40-37. This week's depth chart is the first on the season that is not Dungy number 1, but they are listed as co-starters. And Babers has not yet spoken publicly as to who is going to be the true starter and open and take the first series of the game. Coach, we're all fans of Eric Dungy here. I think we've been pretty outspoken in our support of him as not just a passer, but a pretty effective dual threat guy as well. And, I think that the Orange should be a lock to make a bowl game this season. They're sitting at 5 wins right now. They've got this one at versus NC State, and they get hapless Louisville at home 2 weeks from now. But, Coach, I'm still curious as to how you would handle this particular situation. Because I feel like it could spiral out of control pretty quickly if you start DeVito and he doesn't have a good game.
Right. I think you still need to, despite how poorly Dungy played, I still think he needs to start the game, and I still think he needs to play two or maybe the first 3 series, and then you bring DeVito in. I think if you're it really just depends on what Dino Babers is trying to get out of this whole co-starter thing. If he's truly trying to evaluate who he thinks gives him the best chance at winning down the stretch, then you got to kind of, since Eric Dungy has all this experience and he's been your starter, I think you've got to go, every 2 series, DeVito gets 1. So you go 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. And then if one of them gets hot, you stick with them. And then that's kind of how you let it sort itself out. Otherwise, I think it's going to mess up the rhythm of your team, and you just need to go ahead and name a starter and stick with what you got. I think if you're Dino Babers, Eric Dungey has pulled you this far. You just need to go ahead and.
Dungey has taken them from like a 2-win team a couple years ago, maybe a 1-win team. They were really bad.
Syracuse, I was convinced that they were a G5 team for a long time in football or maybe even FCS in football because they were just so irrelevant. I say that tongue in cheek, but Eric Dungey is really, really, you're right. He put them on the map, and that's got to count for something. And the experience in a big game like this, which is a must-win, I think, for Syracuse. Now, I mean, not that I'm worried about them not getting to a bowl game, but, if they win this game, they could go on a pretty good run, have a really nice season. You looking at 9-3, 8-4 at the worst, 9-3, maybe even.
Yeah, I mean, they still got a couple of tough games. They've got Wake Forest still on the schedule.
You get some confidence going.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw how tight they played Clemson. Like, we know this is a talented team, Josh.
The ACC is a winnable. There's a lot of winnable games in the ACC.
Yeah,
save
Josh,
maybe Clemson.
I feel like there is. I don't want to say parallels between. They're not exact parallels between the Clemson quarterback situation that we saw play out a couple weeks ago between Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence, because he hasn't out and out named to be the starter yet. But
this is kind of like the Georgia quarterback situation. If I'm being honest, the experienced incumbent starter and the freshman, the talented freshman.
Yeah, I think the big difference here though is that the incumbent's the dual threat, like it was in Clemson, whereas the new kid is the guy who is more of a pure pocket passer. Yeah. Which is why I like sort of use the Clemson analogy.
I'm sorry, this is idiotic. I'm not seeing it. Eric Dungey has a much higher completion percentage. Yards per attempt is almost the same. I get it. Eric Dungey's last 3 games, they're 1-2, 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions. I get it. He's hit a rough patch. But you're telling me the guy that has the better passing numbers with a larger sample size, who's also your leading rusher and averaging a team best 5.2 yards per carry, who also has 8 rushing touchdowns, and the next best is 5. You're telling me that you're willing to take him out of his rhythm. I don't get why you do this. Tommy DeVito is a great backup. If things go south, fine, play him in the second half. But I don't get this at all.
Yeah, especially, I feel like Dungey at this point in his career has earned the right to be the starter. He's the guy. He's paid his dues. He's earned it. And, I don't think that there is such an enormous talent gap between the two to say that. I'm pretty sure, I'd have to double check this. I'm pretty sure Dungey's a captain. I'm pretty sure, this kid has given his body to this Syracuse Orange program. And it's either him or Ryan Nassib, who's the best Syracuse quarterback since Donovan McNabb.
Yeah.
And I think you could make a pretty strong case that it's Dungey. I mean, he's been through some lean times.
I don't know, Greg Paulus was pretty good.
Now, Matt, to further answer your question, if I was the head coach at Syracuse, I'm riding with Dungey.
Yeah, I think you have to. I really think you have to. I like DeVito a lot as a prospect. I think next year they're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
They'll be just fine. There will be much less transition than you would typically have from going from a long-term starter to a new starter because of some of the in-game experience he's gotten this year and the fact that he was, one of the best, ranked quarterback recruits that the program has gotten in a long time.
Right.
But anyway, Josh, Coach talked about a big group of 5 matchup. I know there are a couple other good ones, though, coming up this weekend as well.
Yeah, there's some really intriguing games over there in the MAC. 2 are actually non-conference games, and 1 is a conference game. So I'll start with the conference game. Toledo, back-to-back conference losses for the first time in many a season, hits the road to a very surprising Western Michigan team. This is a team that we kind of like some of their parts. We thought they'd maybe finish kind of mid-pack of their division, maybe slip into a very, very early December bowl game if it went really lucky for them. Well, shoot, they're 6-2 and 4-0 in conference. So the Broncos, they got their sights set on a division title, whereas Toledo has slipped to 1-2 in conference, so they're under 500. Rockets are talented, but it's not going their way. So a big opportunity in Kalamazoo, in Waldo Stadium, for the Broncos to take another step closer to a MAC title game. And then those two out-of-conference games, a very interesting set of them. Northern Illinois, they seem to love scheduling tough, and they are undefeated in conference, but just 4-3 overall. They head out to Provo, so that's a tough game against BYU, who's also 4-3. And then Eastern Michigan, this has been a hard luck team that I've talked about with a bunch of narrow losses. They've strung together 2 straight wins. They're at 4-4, but they have to host a really good 5-2 Army team, an Army team that I have ranked 25th in my poll. So some exciting stuff over there in the MAC.
Josh, you've got them ahead of App State.
Yeah, the schedule that Army has played with 2 Power 5 teams on it, playing in Norman, only losing that game by 7, combined with cleaning Buffalo's clock. I just think Army's played a little bit tougher schedule. App State has 1 fewer win. They had a game canceled, which would have been a good opportunity because the game that got canceled was against a Southern Miss team that's in a Conference USA. Army, like I said, they've beaten some good teams, faced some good teams. They've also taken on several Mountain West teams. So I just liked Army's schedule a little bit more. But it was a coin flip. It was really tough to pick which one I wanted to rank.
All right. Well, for my second slant, I wanted to take a look at a matchup between 2 Big 12 teams that are both coming off of bye weeks, but they're kind of headed in different directions before their big matchup against BYE. And that's a big matchup at Stillwater when Texas is taking on Oklahoma State. These buys could not have come at a better time for each of these teams, but for different reasons. Longhorns were able to give Sam Ehlinger enough time to heal in order for him to be back at not quite 100%, but well enough to start the game. And the Pokes, on the other hand, were in drastic need of a reset following consecutive losses to Iowa State and Kansas State. Taylor Cornelius has not even been, I would say, an even adequate replacement for Mason Rudolph so far this season. Because of that, defenses have been able to load up for Justice Hill. Now, obviously, this is all sort of within the Oklahoma State spectrum. They're still averaging 493 yards per game on offense, but they're definitely not the same team they were last year with James Washington and Mason Rudolph. So I'm curious to see how the matchup shakes out between their offense, which has sort of been working in fits and spurts, and the Texas defense, which has looked, pretty good. It's been one of the stronger defenses in the conference. And so I mentioned James Washington there a minute ago. Now, gentlemen, moving into our pop quiz, is someone that in his career has the second most 100-yard receiving games since the year 2010. He has 21 of them. So he, in addition to 21 other players, have had at least 15 100-yard receiving games in the past since, I should say, the beginning of 2010. So, Coach, I'm going to throw the quiz out to you first.
All right. So, 15 games with at least 100-plus receiving yards.
That's
correct. I'm
correct.
going to say one of them is since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm going to say one of those is got to be Calvin Ridley.
Sorry, Coach. Calvin didn't even have 10, I don't believe. Calvin did not even have 10. I think that one of the problems with some of these Alabama guys is that they're not even there for long enough before they go pro.
True.
Josh, you're up.
Well, Coach might have an early strike, but I only jotted down one name, period. So I don't have too many guesses.
All right, well, hit it, Josh. What you got?
But the one name I did write down, I felt good about, Justin Blackman.
Justin Blackman, number 4. He had 19 of them.
Ooh, nice guess. Well done. All right. That would be Justin Blackman. That Calvin Ridley guess kind of torpedoed all of my Alabama guys. AJ Green is too old for this stat line, so I was going to say that one. To be honest with you, I drew a huge blank.
Oh, okay.
So I might strike out early on this. That's not going to stop me from trying, though, right?
I'm just gonna need a name.
I'm going to say DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins had 12, so he fell 3 short. 3 short.
That was a better guess.
It was. There was another Clemson player that did. I will give you that clue. Josh, you're up.
I think I know who you're talking about.
So again, I only wrote one name down, so the rest of this is going to be me just spewing random wide receivers that I know were really good. And that would be, how about Juju Smith-Schuster? Why not?
Juju Smith-Schuster also had 12. So not a terrible guess, but and 12 gets you tied for 40th best since 2010. So it's not bad. It's not a bad number, but not quite 15. Coach.
All right, Mike Williams of Clemson.
No, actually, I'm sorry.
Wrong Clemson guy?
Wrong Clemson receiver. Coach, I'm gonna give you a check swing on that one. Do you have another Clemson receiver you want to throw out there?
Martavis Bryant.
You got another check swing.
Ooh, okay. Running out of Clemson receivers here. Dang. Hunter Renfrow? No.
Okay, sorry. That's not going to do it, Coach. Sammy Watkins was the answer I was looking for. Sammy Watkins. Coach, you struck out. Josh, you have 1 strike. Do you have anyone else?
Another name that popped into my head, again, I think I'm just relying on dudes who are killing it in the NFL and not necessarily hitting that crazy high number for college, but how about Antonio Brown?
Antonio Brown, no. He's been in the NFL for too long, I think. I think he was in I think he graduated in like 2011.
Okay, well,
So,
that shows what happens.
Okay,
when you
well, I will put you guys out of your misery then. Josh is.
How about Keenan Allen?
Keenan Allen, nope.
Julio Jones?
No. There is a Jones there though, who's number 5. That would be Zay Jones.
Dallas Clark. T.Y. Hilton.
Terrell Owens.
Art Monk. How many does he have?
I'm actually looking for Don Hudson. So, no, I'm going to put you guys out of your misery.
Plexico Burress.
Sorry, I don't think his leg's working properly anymore.
All right. Coach, we both got F's.
Yeah.
F's.
Actually, y'all are just going to get straight zeros tonight.
We were drunk.
I got a 0.
So,
Des Bryant.
Number 1 with a bullet, guys. Corey Davis from Western Michigan. He had 27 100-yard games in his career. He is the leading receiver in the history of NCAA football. Surprised you guys didn't get that one. Like I mentioned, James Washington.
He's the Western Michigan.
Yeah. Following him, Louisiana Tech's Trent Taylor, Justin Blackman, who Josh mentioned, Zay Jones, Jordan Matthews, Tywan Taylor, Rashad Higgins, Cody Hoffman, Titus Davis from Central Michigan, Justin Hardy from East Carolina, Tyler Lockett from Kansas State, Anthony Miller, who just graduated from Memphis, Jordan White from Western Michigan, Ryan Broyles, Jamison Crowder, he was a Dookie, Nick Harwell from Miami of Ohio, Rashad Green from Florida State, Richie James from MTSU, Marquise Lee from USC, Thomas Spurbeck from Boise State, and finally Sammy Watkins.
I mean, in my defense, Matt, most of the football I watch is Iowa and Wisconsin, where they're lucky to have a 100-yard quarterback.
That is very true. Actually, among the top 100 players, there's only one Badger or Hawkeye. Josh, do you want to guess who that is? He had 10.
Maybe one of Iowa's all-time leading receivers, maybe Jarrell Johnson-Koulianos?
Nope, sorry.
Who is it?
It is Jared Abbrederis.
That's from Wisconsin. I thought you said Iowa.
I said Iowa or Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
The number one Hawkeye, Marvin McNutt.
Oh,
Nice.
yeah.
So
Who's the number one? Let me see if I can guess the number one dog. Is it AJ Green?
Herschel Walker.
should be Herschel Walker.
Lindsey Scott? That's a little Georgia, Florida weak humor.
I cannot. Hold on. There's not been a dog who has. I can only get the top 100 on a page at a time. Gosh, the number one dog since 2010, Tavares King.
Yes.
And he had
like one.
he had 6.
Jeez. I thought it would have been Malcolm Mitchell.
Number 2 was Chris Conley.
I believe that.
He had 5.
I believe that.
So,
He missed a lot of time.
so there you have it. All right, gents. Well, let's stay with those dogs. And yet again, it seems like the world's largest out there. Let me start that. Let's stick with the dogs. And yet again, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party looks like a de facto title game for the SEC East. Coach, your dogs have had a week to lick their wounds following the loss to the Bayou Bengals. How do you expect this team to look different against the hated Gators?
Well, they've had a bye week to kind of get some of their fundamentals in check. Let's say that we hope that the quarterback position is a little bit better. That'll be a good starting piece. I've heard that Justin Fields is going to play a lot more and may even start, but you never know. So that position is continuing to be evaluated. I would love to see kind of how Tyson Campbell, the freshman cornerback, how he has progressed throughout the bye week, and hopefully we can see some marked improvement from him. He certainly got picked on all season long, and it certainly won't let up anytime soon until he starts actually making stops, and unless DeAndre, whatever the heck his name is over there, DeAndre Baker. I drew a blank there. If he doesn't play, then maybe they'll stop picking on Tyson Campbell. But the inside linebacker position is one that I'm intrigued in to see kind of how it shakes out. There's some holes there, and I think that the inside run is something that Georgia prided themselves on being able to stop. They haven't had so much luck in doing so. And one of the things Florida does really well is they actually run the ball really well with P. Ryan and Scarlett. And so that's something that, if Florida can get their running game going like they did against LSU, they can have success through the air and not have to put a whole lot of effort into the passing game and not have to rely on Felipe Franks. It doesn't go well for them when they can rely on their running game. Everything comes off of their running game. So Felipe Franks is allowed to have a little bit more time in the pocket, and they allow him offensively to make the efficient plays that he can make. He can make a play every once in a while, if there's no pressure on him. But if you're constantly in his face, if you're one-dimensional, he can't make those plays. He's got a pretty daggum good target over there in Van Jefferson to throw to, the transfer from Ole Miss. And then defensively, they're very opportunistic. They're very I don't want to use the word front running because I don't know if that's the right word to describe it, but they're very momentum driven. And if things are going really well, they're the team that's just absolutely in your face and they're going to let you know about it. But if things aren't going well, field position is out of whack, or Felipe Franks is a little bit off keel, then this defense is kind of the same way. So knowing what I know about Todd Grantham and his time at Georgia, one of the biggest things that Georgia can do is go up tempo, something that I think fits the identity of Jake Fromm. I think if you're going to go with Jake Fromm as your guy, I think you've got to quit being stubborn and go with what he's good at, which is the 2-minute drill. Just make that your normal tempo when he's in the game. Throw the ball a lot more frequently. You'll get a lot more. You'll be surprised what you get out of Jake Fromm. If you're going to commit to Justin Fields, it's a lot of read option, a lot of RPO. Let him throw a little bit. Let him manage the running game and just do what you do. Find the strength of both guys, evaluate them, and see what they get you. So there's a lot of intriguing things about this game. Two teams that are seemingly going in opposite directions. I know it seems like the world is collapsing on top of Georgia, and then I know it seems like Florida's got a rocket ship underneath them, and they're freaking skyrocketing to the moon, and they're going to be the next national champion out of the SEC. But I think these teams are they're still very different. I still think Georgia is the elite team of the SEC East. I think Florida's still looking way up the ladder, not saying they can't get up there and knock them off or shake the ladder up a little bit, but it's going to take a lot to do so. And I don't think that everything that Florida has, talent-wise, I just don't think they have enough of it. I don't think they have the proper depth to hang in a game like this. And I think Georgia is going to, even with all the raw talent that they have, I think they're going to get back on track here. I think they're going to do well in stopping what Florida has to do. The key for it is to make Florida's offense one-dimensional. The key to beating Florida's defense, go up tempo, get them scrambling a little bit, and keep them out of some of the more complex blitz packages that they like to bring.
Josh, is there anything that you're going to be keying in on this game?
Well, there's a huge thing I'm going to be keying in on this game. Look, ESPN loves to use the transitive property, and we have a great example of that here in this SEC battle. So Florida, they lost to Kentucky. Kentucky lost to Texas A&M. Texas A&M only beat South Carolina by 3, and Georgia smoked South Carolina. So clearly, Georgia, through the transitive property, is way better than Florida. They don't have anything to worry about, right, Coach?
That's right.
No, the thing about Florida that I'm going to be looking on in all seriousness is they dropped that Kentucky game early in the year, 0-1 in conference, 1-1 overall at that point, and it seemed like that took all the pressure off of them. They were like, well, this is Georgia's division to lose. We got a first-year coach. We're rebuilding. Felipe Franks, we know he's not going to be the quarterback of the future. Let's just go out there and have some fun and ball out. And what happened? Well, they've strung a bunch of wins together, and they pulled off a big upset on LSU. And what I also like about this team is they are doing a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but they're producing points. They've found a way to produce 34 points per game, 37th in the country. That's not too shabby, all things considered, as much as some of us have ragged on Felipe Franks' play. It's not too shabby considering their leading rusher has under 400 yards at this point. So what I'm curious about is now that some of the pressure's back on Florida as they're in the top 10, everyone's saying this is for the division. How do they respond? That offense that's been producing points despite not having the sexiest of stats, how do they get it done against Georgia's defense? So obviously, Coach is going to be rooting for Georgia. I don't have a rooting interest in this game, but I like my friends to enjoy their weekend, so I hope Georgia does well. But from a pure entertainment, observation, and all that good stuff, I'm curious how Florida comes out and plays.
I think they come out strong out of the gate. Georgia's just got to get after Felipe Franks and force him into some bad throws and turnovers and things like that.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. It's probably going to be a pretty low-scoring affair, I would imagine. I'm just, I'm still curious, like Coach mentioned, about the Georgia quarterback situation, because I know that Fields has, looked pretty good, but, it's not quite like the Syracuse situation that we talked about a little bit earlier, but especially because Fromm is only a sophomore. And I don't, we saw him, unseat Eason, and Eason promptly transferred. Well, is the same thing going to happen again, do you think, if Fields becomes the starter, Coach?
To be honest with you, I don't know. You would, conventional wisdom would say, with the current climate of quarterbacks, to say, yes, Fromm would probably transfer and get a waiver and all that good stuff, and everything is all good. But then again, part of me thinks that he won't. He'll just kind of stick it out, and it just kind of.
He's a Georgia kid. He seems like a Georgia kid through and through.
Yeah, and that's kind of what honestly, if he wasn't playing, I would like to see him do what's best for him, and I certainly wouldn't blame him if he decided to transfer. But you're always one play away if you're the backup anyway, and maybe he's a guy that helps Fields out, and then just transitions right on into being a coach, which I think that's in his future anyway. So I don't think he can really lose out in any of these situations, because I think everything's gonna be geared towards him being a coach and things like that. So I it wouldn't surprise me either way. If I was him, I probably would transfer, maybe go down to FCS, play right away, and just maybe go down to Mercer and play in my hometown. And
I don't know about Mercer, but like I could see him.
Well, he's from that area. Is I said that, and if he was going down to the FCS level,
like, it wouldn't surprise me if he went to a place like Florida State.
Yeah. Oh, if he redshirted,
if he decided to go somewhere to take a redshirt,
he would probably. Yeah, I don't think Kirby would release him to go play at Auburn, but his brother's committed to Auburn right now as a tight end.
That would be interesting.
But his brother might not go to Auburn if he decides to transfer. Florida State would be a tremendous fit for him. Miami would be a tremendous fit for him, because he was sort of recruited by Mark Richt. Tennessee would be a good destination for him but Kirby would never release him there. I think any of those Carolina schools would probably be a great fit for him. I mean,
well, you know what? Alex Hornibrook's brother is committed to play at Stanford starting the next year, and I wouldn't mind to see if Alex Hornibrook transfer over there. Just
that'd be nice.
Not a Badger anymore. But that's a different story. That's my team. But we should move over to our other co-host team. They've got a top 25 matchup on the road in Happy Valley against Penn State. Josh, matchup to me to watch seems to be the Iowa linebackers versus Trace McSorley, but I'm really curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So Iowa has had some injuries. They had a targeting suspension. So they've been jostling their linebacker core. The secondary, as a result, they've brought down one of their safeties to play linebacker. So they've done some jostling in the secondary. They've had one player really struggling this year. Lost his starting job. So the back seven of the defense has actually kind of been overhauled, and Iowa fans are getting excited, maybe not necessarily for the rest of this year, but for next season, going, whoa, we're getting a bunch of young kids with playing time. We might be super deep in the years to come at that position. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. How do they hold up against Trace McSorley, who he's been phenomenal. Again, his numbers are basically unchanged from last year. He's having a hell of a season. But what strikes me very fascinating about this game is the FPI, big favorites for Penn State. Vegas, almost a touchdown favorite for Penn State. They also get to play spoiler. They essentially have nothing left to play for in terms of the division race. So Iowa has everything to play for. So does Iowa come out and play above their heads because the game's more important to them? Does Penn State enjoy their role as a spoiler? At times last week, Penn State looked really disinterested before surviving and beating Indiana. So I'm curious about kind of the mind of these two teams. But when you look at the matchup that is going to be the key for Iowa, is their run defense has been phenomenal this year. And for all the headlines that Trace McSorley rightfully garners, the Penn State rushing attack, pretty dang good too. And Miles Sanders, he's averaging 100 yards a game. He is one heck of a running back. So I think McSorley is probably going to get some good numbers. The problem is Iowa cannot withstand a 1-2 punch. They got to find a way to shut down Miles Sanders. They got to do almost what Purdue did to Ohio State, which is say, we're stopping your run. You might throw over us a little bit. We'll bend a little bit, but we'll come up big in the red zone. So I'm going to see a similar game plan, I think, from Iowa. And I'm nervous, but there's also some excitement because if they win this one, they're going to be right there with Wisconsin the rest of the way, because this is I know Iowa still has a trip to West Lafayette, but this game feels like the hardest, even with that looming Purdue game also.
Mm-hmm. Coach, how do you feel about this one?
Well, I think I agree with a lot of what Josh is saying, just strictly on the fact that Penn State's always known for their great running game, and that kind of goes without mentioning. And I think, honestly, if you're really into quarterbacks, I think this is a good one to watch. Trace McSorley and Nathan Stanley, two, in my mind, two phenomenal quarterbacks. McSorley more of a dual threat. I think Iowa's defense is extremely strong. They're allowing just 258 yards per game, coming off a huge shutout against Maryland. Anytime you shut out a conference opponent, I think that's a big deal. Anytime it doesn't matter who it is, even if it's Rutgers, you shut them out. Congratulations. It's a shutout. You can celebrate it. You didn't give up any points. That's something to hang your hat on. They've averaged 38 points per game in their last 3 wins. Is that right, Josh?
Yeah, they've been scoring the ball really dang well the last few weeks.
Brian Ferentz is lighting it up. So
okay, let's not go crazy. But, one of those scores came from a jet sweep where the wide receiver ran into his quarterback and then the quarterback kicked it into the end zone. So,
well, didn't they plan that?
Yeah, Brian Ferentz drew up that defensive play for Maryland to go horribly wrong.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, Brian Ferentz is a genius. So I really, to be honest with you, I really kind of think for this year, I'm not saying, program overall, but I think Iowa is, I think their arrow's pointing up, and I think Penn State right now, they're 5-2, 2-2 in conference, but I kind of feel like their arrow is pointing downward. They haven't played as well as they've wanted to since that Ohio State game, and I just don't think they have any rhythm offensively. I don't think they have a good feel of the game as far as play calling offensively. I think their defense struggles at times because their offense can't get in rhythm, and I think their defense is out on the field maybe too much. Iowa is a team that I feel like, for the most part, is in rhythm. I know Josh could probably point out dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of where they're not in rhythm, but I think overall, if you look at the whole thing, you don't average 38 points over the last 3 games not being in rhythm. So can McSorley get Penn State back on track? Who knows? He's going to have a tough time doing it against Iowa. Iowa's going to have to win a really tough road game. One thing I don't like about this matchup for Iowa is the fact that they have to travel to Happy Valley. Happy Valley is typically a very extremely tough place to play. So
Happy Valley is a sad place for opponents.
Yes, it's not a happy. It's not. There's nothing happy about it if you're a road opponent. But I think Iowa's going to change that, and not just because I like you, Josh. I truly think that this defense is going to shut down Penn State's offense. I think Ricky Rain Rane, or however they pronounce his name these days. I don't really care until he gets a big win, but I think he's going to be on his heels all night long. I don't think he's going to be able to adjust to this Iowa defense, and McSorley's going to you're going to see McSorley just kind of out of rhythm, and he's going to make some un-McSorley-like plays. So give me the Hawkeyes. I'm certainly rooting for the Hawkeyes, but I certainly think they're going to win, and I think so. I would say that, Josh, if you were a fan of Utah, it had nothing to do with Iowa, I would still say that.
Yeah, I like Iowa in this spot too, because defense travels, and I think that Iowa has, probably after Michigan, the best defense in the conference. So, I was, getting a touchdown here. I would definitely be putting my hard-earned money on the Hawkeyes here, but we'll do our spread formations a little bit later. Yeah. Our picks.
Well, just to tie a bow on the game, it's really weird. You know how there's some teams you feel like you can never beat, and then there's teams like you feel
like Northwestern.
Yeah, and you feel like there's a team that you have a puncher's chance against. Well, for whatever reason, maybe it's because he's from the state of Pennsylvania and never got that offer from Paterno, never got to be on Paterno's staff. But Kirk seems really fired up for Penn State every year, and he's got a winning record against them. He's had some big wins in Beaver Stadium. Had one even during a whiteout game back when Adrian Claiborne blocked the punt. So it's bizarre. When Iowa, say, goes to the Horseshoe, I'm expecting a 56-0 beatdown. When Iowa plays at Penn State, I'm kind of expecting Iowa to play above their heads. And that happened last season, where Penn State needed a final last-second drive to avoid a major upset. So it's just, for whatever reason, it's weird. I don't know why it happens sometimes, but this is one of the few games where Kirk seems to have the boys fired up.
Definitely. All right. Well, we'll head over to everyone's second favorite conference, the American. We're going to get some great games over the second half of the season in the AAC. The first marquee game, though, takes place in Houston this weekend when South Florida comes to town. Bulls are one of 5 remaining unbeaten teams in the country. They're 11th in the country in total yards, but they have yet to face a defense like the Cougars. More specifically, a defense that has a player like Ed Oliver. Coach, how do you game plan for an interior disruptor like him?
You avoid any interior runs. He is truly a threat. You've got to figure out a way to double team, trap, option off him, things like that, screen him. He's just so disruptive that he's just one of those guys that offensive coordinators just have sleepless nights over. They circle his number. They figure out they get out of character game plans because one guy. I experienced this a few weeks ago when we played Hillsboro. They had an Ed Oliver type kid named Joseph Honeysucker. I was just trying to rack my brain on how we were going to stop him and slow him down, and we didn't slow him down too well. But Hale did juke him out 3 times, and he actually sat him down one time, juked him so hard. So I felt a little bit better about that. But, for an interior guy like Ed Oliver, you just got to, get the ball out quick, throw fast screens, and trap him, pull, things like that. If you're going to just strictly rely on zone runs against Ed Oliver, he's going to eat you alive. So you just got to flank him, double him, trap him, all that stuff.
Josh, how do you feel about Houston's offense at this point in the season, D'Eriq King?
Feel highly confident about everything Houston's been doing. In fact, I did not rank South Florida. When I was looking at the American, I put Houston closer to my poll than South Florida. And you mentioned Derek King, he's up to 23 touchdowns, pretty solid QBR, closing on 2,000 yards. Gotta like how he's playing. And the reason why I'm so hesitant about South Florida is it's this nasty eye test thing. They only beat Connecticut by 8, only beat Tulsa by a point, only beat East Carolina by a touchdown. You flip it around. Well, Houston beat East Carolina by 22. They beat Tulsa by 15. They're beating common opponents by more. They've just looked better the last few weeks. And much like Georgia Southern App State, I think Houston's licking their chops at getting to play a ranked opponent at home. I think this is the end of the line for South Florida. I expect Houston to win, quite frankly.
It's going to be a close one. Josh, I'm tempted to go with you on this, and I think that I don't know how much of a home field advantage Houston typically has, but I think it'll be a pretty good one against South Florida. Let's head now, though, to our final deep route, which is going to be over in the Pac-12 and another top 25 matchup. This week going down on the farm, Washington State comes into town riding high after their victory over Oregon. Josh, do you think this is a letdown spot for the Cougars?
Well, you said something earlier in the show, Matt, that Coach and I always agree with, and that is defense is portable. And that's what Washington State's playing to get in contention to win this division. And that's going to come a long way because Stanford, it's just been a nightmare offensively with struggling offensive line play, Bryce Love being dinged up. I mean, who in the world would have predicted Stanford to be sitting right now, 7 games into the season, 35th in passing, 127th in rushing? That's not Stanford football. They're producing under 25 points per game. They're 101st in scoring. That's not Stanford football. And Bryce Love, just 348 yards on an injury-plagued season. So it's a great opportunity for Washington State because of that improved defense, taking on a team that's just had a season-long struggle with offense. But you know what? It's the farm. It's Stanford. Stanford still has a pretty good defense. I'm glad we're not doing this game in spread formations because I don't know who I would pick, but I think Stanford is a team that's always going to factor into this Pac-12 North. They're a tough demon to slay, especially at the farm. So if Washington State wins it, man, I might pencil them in to run the table. Because that win would impress me quite a bit to win at Stanford.
Yeah, Coach. What's going on with Stanford's offense? Is it as simple as the offensive line is just not as advertised and Bryce Love's been injured, or is there something bigger at play?
That's exactly what it is. I mean, the offensive line is just very overrated. I think losing Mike Bloomgren to Rice was one of their biggest, most impactful losses coming into the season. He was just kind of the gel that held that offensive line together. They're not the same without him. They've vastly underachieved. Bryce Love has been banged up. That doesn't help. And when you have a pass game that is heavily reliant on a good run game, it kind of throws everything off kilter. So, yes, to answer your question, it's exactly what it is.
All right. Well, let's move to spread formations. We'll start in Heinz Field, where the Dukies are coming off of a loss, and they are set to play Pitt. Blue Devils, 2.5-point favorites on the road here. Coach, who are you taking?
I'm going to take the Dukies.
All right, Josh?
Well, whenever you have an offensively challenged team, it's tough to be super confident. And Pittsburgh, 104th in scoring. Past offense has been a mess, 118th in that. Duke is a team that I had ranked up until their most recent loss. I really like their resume still. They do some impressive things, so I'm joining the coach on this one. Give me the Dukies.
All right. Yeah, guys, I think I'm with you here. I want to take Pitt. I picked Pitt to be runner-up in their division of the ACC this year, but it is just not really coming together there. So, and we'll see if our boy Pat Narduzzi, is able to get another season. I'm worried that he's going to be on the hot seat. But let's head over.
If that's happened, someone is going to get one hell of a defensive coordinator.
Yeah. So, let's head over then to Ames. And after their big win over West Virginia 2 weeks ago, Iowa State got a bye week to rest up for Coach GQ's air raid. Cyclones are 3.5-point favorites at home. Coach, what side are you on?
Well, the Cyclones are playing. They're playing their butts off. So give me the Cyclones here. They're riding high. Their defense, it's portable, but it doesn't need to be because they're at home, obviously. And I think Coach GQ he's doing better, but I think Iowa State has really skyrocketed this year. I think they have far exceeded everybody's expectations up to this point. I can safely say they are a good football team. And so is Texas Tech. It'll be a very competitive matchup, but I think Iowa State is going to win, and they're going to cover.
Josh?
Well, I fully realize I might look like the biggest moron because their next games are at Iowa State, Oklahoma, and Texas. But when I was crunching the numbers for my poll this week, I have the Red Raiders as 24th in my poll. So I can't buy them in my poll on the blog and then turn around and pick against them. I think they get it done. As much as I wholeheartedly agree with everything Coach said, Iowa State is they're a grinder team. They should be in the Big Ten the way they like to play defense.
Can we trade Iowa State for Nebraska? I think that's a win-win.
I would go with that, and what the league would be getting is, quite frankly, another Michigan State, which is just a hard-nosed, disgusting football team that turns every game ugly, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. Sometimes ugly in football can be dang right beautiful.
It is beautiful, and I'm gonna take that beauty. Give me the Clowns at home. A little bit worried about that half point there. I think it's going to be a 3-point game, but when push comes to shove, I will take the Cyclones. We will head south from Ames to Columbia, Missouri for a matchup between the Tigers and the Kentucky Wildcats. After 3 consecutive losses, Mizzou smoked Memphis last week, putting up 65 points in the process. Wildcats, 6.5-point dogs on the road. Coach, who you got in your home conference?
Well, I think Kentucky is extremely tough defensively. I think they control the clock with Benny Snell, and I think they limit Missouri's possessions, which is going to limit Missouri's ability to cover. Missouri may win this game, but they ain't going to win by more than 6.5. So give me the Cats to at least cover and maybe even downright win.
Josh?
So Missouri is in the 90s right now in points against, 91st. Why do I bring that up? Well, Kentucky's last 3 games where their offense hasn't looked quite as good is because they're playing good defensive teams. Vanderbilt, 55th. South Carolina, we know Will Muschamp likes to coach defense. They are 64th. And then Texas A&M, amazing rush defense, and overall they're 29th. So I think the Wildcats enjoy playing a softer defensive team, and as a result, I'm going to take Kentucky because they're winning straight up.
Ooh, Josh, the big pick there. I'm a believer that. Like we said multiple times before, I still think Kentucky has a pretty decent defense, and I don't want to be just sort of glomming onto what you guys are saying, but yeah, man, I'm taking the Wildcats as well. I still believe in Benny Snell. I think he's going to get the ball more this week, and it should be, it should be again a tight one, but I will take Kentucky as well. Well, we've already covered Josh and Corey's favorite teams today, so it was only right that we take mine as well. Badgers are at Northwestern, which has been an absolute house of horrors for my alma mater. Their only victory in Evanston this century came 2 years ago. So they play Northwestern every single year. So Badgers giving 6.5 on the road. Coach, what's your pick?
Oh, this is probably when I looked at this list, I was like, man, this is so tough to pick because I could see Wisconsin and Jonathan Taylor tailback just freaking blowing them out of the water. He has a 200 yard rushing day, and we're talking about how good Wisconsin looked and how nice it is to see them bounce back. But I just at Kyle Field, Kyle Field. No,
Ryan Field. It was really nice of Texas A&M to open this up as a neutral site game.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be way more comfortable if this was played at Kyle Field than I am that being the fact that it's at Ryan Field.
I knew it was some common name. So with Hornibrook at the helm, I don't trust Wisconsin. I still think they pull it out. Because I think they are a little bit deeper. They're better up front. Even in their struggles, I still think they're better up front. So I still think Wisconsin's going to win. They're going to win 24-20, which does not cover the 6.5 point spread. But I do think Wisconsin wins. I am rooting for Wisconsin. I hope I'm wrong on this one. I hope I go 4-1 for the sake that Matt can feel good about his Badgers once again.
All right, Josh.
So Northwestern's defense, they're the strength. They can really make teams one-dimensional, and Wisconsin sort of does that to themselves anyway with some of their passing difficulties. This Northwestern team, they've struggled with turnover margin this year, so I expect Wisconsin to have a lot more possessions. And Jeremy Larkin had to retire due to injury, and this was several weeks ago. So he had a career ending, debilitating thing. So he retired from football for his own safety. Smart decision. He goes to Northwestern, so that makes sense. But he retired several weeks ago. He's still their leading rusher at 346 yards.
That's not a good sign.
So since his departure, Northwestern, they can't run the ball a lick. They're 128th. So Wisconsin does not have to worry about loading the box, which means at defensive front for the Badgers is just going to lock Northwestern's running game down. They can drop 7 in coverage, not have to worry about it. So I expect Wisconsin to win, covering that spread and all that. Northwestern, I realize they are a scary team, but even the most ardent Wildcat supporter, who's probably Julia Louis-Dreyfus, would just – she would agree that they've frankly been a little lucky the last few weeks, and this is just not a vintage Cardiac Cat team because of so many issues running the ball.
Yeah, they really wish Justin Jackson had a 5th year of eligibility.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. I am.
Was that your pick then?
No, that's not my pick. That was just a sidebar.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But my pick is Wisconsin, and as much as I've ragged on Hornibrook, and will continue to rag on Hornibrook because I can guarantee he's going to throw 2 interceptions in this game. Josh mentioned the rushing offense for Northwestern, and it's really bad, and I don't think they can take advantage of a Badger defensive line that with nose tackle Olivier Sagapolu as a game time decision, they are without all 3 starting offensive linemen from the beginning of the year. Defensive linemen from the beginning of the year, and this is a mash unit, possibly one of the worst outside of Sagapolu, possibly the worst Badger defensive line in recent memory. And very young secondary, but their linebackers are still excellent. TJ Edwards and Ryan Connolly in the middle are as good of a middle linebacking duo as there is anywhere in the country. And I think that they will be able to do enough in terms of pass rush with Andrew Van Ginkel and Zach Bond and a couple other guys. Christian Bell has looked pretty good over the last couple of games, transfer from Alabama. He's starting to show up a little bit. And they've been getting unexpected contributions. Walk-on safety Evan Bondock stepped in last week and was outstanding, 11 tackles and an interception, in his first career start. So I think that the Jimmy Leonard will have enough in store to, keep Northwestern under 20. Jonathan Taylor should be able to get enough going between him and Taiwan Deal, who's been outstanding lately. They've got enough of a 1-2 punch to just control the clock. I can see Wisconsin having 38 to 40, minutes of time possession this one, and getting a win, 24-17, 27-17, something like that. So I will take my Badgers to cover. And finally, no Rutgers this week. So our only pathetic line is actually a little bit closer than usual. Kansas are only 14-point dogs at home to TCU. Coach, how do you feel about this one?
Depends. Is the track still there?
Josh?
Regrettably, I believe it did get replaced in about 2010, and we've just never acknowledged it.
Well, why would we?
Hey, you got to get your boy David Beatty to answer my calls. He won't do it. So, Josh, I need you to tap into that direct line and get him on the phone. Tell him to put the track back in, because that's the only thing that's going to be able to stop TCU. And until they do that, TCU is going to run wild on Kansas.
Well, talk about my good friend David Beatty. Fired the offensive coordinator because –
Hey, I know somebody that could coordinate his offense.
Because they only put up 28 points in a losing effort to Oklahoma State, and they only put up 2 points in a losing effort to West Virginia. His debut against Texas Tech, without that offensive coordinator, 16 points. That's the opposite of what you want to do when you make that change. TCU covers.
All right. The one thing I would be worried about, guys, in this one, I'm taking Kansas. I'm going with the Jayhawks, and here's why. Kansas is still number 1 in the country in turnover margin.
Rutgers had 20 of them in one game.
They're still plus 14 for the season.
Rutgers just turned it over again.
Yeah.
TCU for the season is minus 10. That is good for 127th in the country. TCU's been having some problems with the quarterback position. Cuckoo Williams Jr. is, one of the top backs in the conference, and he's only a freshman. TCU wins 27-21. So rock chalk, baby, rock chalk. I think that's going to do it for us, Josh.
Actually, I had one gambling thing while we were on it.
While you're here.
Yeah. I don't know if this will be an official spread formation, but it caught my eye. It was really interesting. Fresno State, number 1 in the country scoring defense. They are 97.7% per FPI favorite to beat Hawaii. But Hawaii's crazy air raid offense has worked pretty well this year. Fresno, 25-point favorites.
I saw that.
Yeah, that was a little higher spread than I would have guessed.
Same.
Yeah, so
is there an injury that we don't know about? That seems pretty fishy to me.
Well, the starting quarterback for Hawaii, that Cole McDonald guy, remember he missed a few games with an undisclosed injury. Mm-hmm. So he missed the Wyoming game, but he's come back and played the last 2 games. So I'm not entirely sure what the prognosticators are looking at. Maybe they're buying stock in the fact that Hawaii's dropped the last 2 games, but I just thought that was an interesting number.
Yeah, that seems very high to me. So not really sure what's going on there. But Josh, should we bury the lead again?
We did. And Arkansas is coming off a really nice win against Tulsa. But yeah, it was a really nice win against a certain team from Oklahoma. I'll leave it at that. Let you guys think that it was Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. It wasn't. It was Tulsa. But they get
I thought it was Oral Roberts.
Nice. If it was basketball, that would have been a mildly interesting game. But they get Vanderbilt this week, and the Doors have a really nagging issue, which is they can't win conference games.
That's a problem.
Yeah, so
that could get in the way a little bit.
So I said it last week in a joking manner that Arkansas can get to 5 wins and sneak into the Cure Bowl that way. But in all seriousness, this would be a nice way to pick up first conference win at home. The doors are struggling, and maybe we can see some signs of life from Arkansas. And it pains me to have a positive burying the lead.
Oh, man. All right. Well, Coach, anything from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of give my last little nugget on the Washington State-Stanford game, I think, for Washington State. They just need to continue doing what they do offensively. Interestingly enough, hopefully Mike Leach can get this monkey off his back. He seems to kind of collapse in situations like this, especially down the stretch. But I think this Washington State team is finally I feel like they're finally built to withstand the midseason, downward slope wall that they seem to hit every single year, where you start talking about them, patting them on the back as contenders, and all of a sudden they let you down and lose 3 or 4 in a row. So Gardner Minshew is extremely fun to watch. So this will be one of my favorite matchups, and I do think Washington State kind of shakes that stigma, and I think they put Stanford out of their misery.
All right.
I had one other nugget I forgot to mention, so I'll slap it in right here when Coach did his nugget.
Is it a Chick-fil-A nugget, a Wendy's nugget, or a McDonald's nugget?
Oh, it's the original. It's a McNugget. For those of you just kind of glance at the schedule and go, oh, that's weird. Why is Nebraska playing FCS Bethune-Cookman? They had that Akron game canceled, and so they were scrambling around to find a 12th game with the hopes of maybe making a bowl at 6-6. Really tough to find a team on the fly. They got Bethune-Cookman, so a mid-season non-conference FCS team. This is Nebraska's audition for the SEC.
We don't want them.
Yeah, we already determined they're going to the Big 12. Come on now. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for us here today. So on behalf of our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton, here in Nashville, Tennessee, and our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook, up there in Chicago, Illinois, this is the professor in Nashville saying so long and see you next time on the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast.
Nebraska, please do not come to the SEC. Don't do it. I urge you.
Thanks for listening to the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. To get in touch with the show, email us at illegalmotionpodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at illegal_motion.